What if the town was never trying to trap anyone? What if every death, every nightmare, every monster, and every impossible event has only one purpose: to build the perfect person? It sounds impossible, but once you look at the evidence, almost every mystery in From starts pointing toward the same terrifying conclusion. The monsters aren't hunting randomly. The voices aren't speaking randomly. The visions aren't random. Even the people who arrive in the town may not be random, because the town doesn't seem interested in killing everyone. If that were true, nobody would survive for long. Instead, it keeps people alive just enough to change them. It breaks them, tests them, forces impossible choices, then watches who they become afterward. And that changes everything. Because maybe the real experiment isn't about survival. Maybe it's about transformation. Look at what the show is actually telling us. Every major character enters the town carrying emotional baggage. Boyd is exhausted by responsibility. Tabitha struggles with grief. Jim believes logic can solve everything. Jade hides behind intelligence. Sara hears voices because her mind is already vulnerable. Victor has spent almost his entire life inside the town. These aren't random personalities. They're people already broken in different ways. Now, ask yourself something far more dangerous. Why would the town choose people who already have emotional scars? Because scars are easier to reshape. And this is where it gets darker. Think about Boyd. Almost every major event in his story follows the exact same pattern. First, he is given hope. Then that hope is destroyed. Then he is forced into another impossible decision. It happens again, and again, and again. Every victory immediately becomes another psychological test. Finding livestock, losing people, the worms beneath his skin, the music box, the dungeon, Martin, the cicadas. None of these experiences simply happen to Boyd. Each one changes him. Each one pushes him toward becoming someone completely different from the man who first entered the town. That's not normal storytelling. That's controlled progression. Almost like someone is designing his emotional evolution. Now think about Tabitha. At first, she wants answers. Simple answers. A road. A map. A way home. But slowly the town changes the questions she's asking. Instead of asking how to leave, she begins asking why the town exists at all. That's a completely different person. Her curiosity evolves. Her fear evolves. Even her faith evolves. The town didn't simply challenge her. It reshaped the way she thinks. This is the detail everyone missed. Every character slowly abandons the beliefs they arrived with. Jim trusted science. Now science keeps failing him. Jade mocked everything supernatural. Now he spends his life chasing symbols no rational person should believe in. Sara trusted the voices, then feared them, then questioned them, then followed them again. Notice what's happening. The town isn't trying to prove anyone right. It's forcing every belief system to collapse. Why? Because people become easier to rebuild after everything they believe has been destroyed. That sounds terrifying, but it becomes even worse when we examine Victor. Victor may be the single biggest piece of evidence supporting this theory. Most people think Victor survived because he was lucky. But what if luck has nothing to do with it? Victor has lived in the town longer than almost anyone. He's witnessed multiple massacres. He's watched entire generations disappear. He's forgotten things, remembered things, drawn things, buried things, protected secrets. And somehow, he's still alive. Ask yourself the obvious question. Why? The monsters have had decades to kill him. They know exactly where he lives. They've seen him alone countless times. Yet Victor survives while stronger, smarter, and healthier people die within days. That shouldn't happen. Unless Victor isn't being spared accidentally. Unless he's being preserved. Look carefully at how the monsters behave around different people. Sometimes they attack immediately. Sometimes they wait. Sometimes they speak calmly. Sometimes they smile. Sometimes they manipulate. Sometimes they simply observe. Their behavior isn't consistent. At first, that looks like bad luck. But maybe it's actually selection. Maybe every victim receives a different test. Because different people require different forms of pressure. Boyd faces responsibility. Jade faces obsession. Sara faces guilt. Tabitha faces hope. Victor faces memory. Each test attacks the weakest part of that person's identity. Not their body. Their mind. That's not how predators behave. That's how psychologists behave. But here's what changes everything. What if the monsters aren't the real architects? What if they're only one tool inside a much larger system? Because every time someone believes they've discovered the rules change. Every single time. The talismans worked. Until new horrors appeared. The monsters were the greatest threat. Until the music box arrived. The music box seemed unbeatable. Until another mystery replaced it. It's almost as if the town refuses to let anyone become comfortable. Because comfort ends growth. Fear creates change. Confusion creates dependence. Pain creates transformation. Those aren't random horror elements. They're stages of conditioning. And once you notice that pattern, you start seeing it everywhere. Even the smallest details begin pointing toward something horrifying. The strange symbols. The impossible electricity. The collapsing reality. The children. The voices. The trees that move. The faraway trees. None of these mysteries exist separately. They all accomplish the exact same goal. They force people to question reality itself. And when reality breaks, identity breaks with it. That is exactly what the town wants. Not dead people. Broken people. Because broken people can be rebuilt into something entirely new. And if that's true, then we've been asking the wrong question since the very first episode. The real mystery isn't how people escape the town. The real mystery is, what is the town trying to turn them into? If the town is trying to transform people instead of simply killing them, then one question becomes impossible to ignore. Why does it keep repeating the same cycle? Every time a new group arrives, the pattern begins again. Someone refuses to believe. Someone becomes obsessed. Someone hears impossible voices. Someone loses hope. Someone discovers a clue. Someone dies before revealing the truth. At first, it feels like ordinary horror storytelling. But look closer. This isn't repetition. It's a process. Almost like the town is running the same experiment over and over again, searching for a different result. And this is where it gets darker. Think about the children. The mysterious children are always treated as victims. They appear frightened, helpless, almost innocent. But that's not the real mystery. The real mystery is why they keep appearing only to certain people. Tabitha sees them. Victor remembers them. Others barely notice them at all.
Why?
If these children simply wanted help, why wouldn't they reveal themselves to everyone? Because maybe they aren't trying to be rescued. Maybe they're trying to guide someone who is ready. Look at what the show is actually telling us. Every vision appears at the exact moment a character reaches a psychological breaking point. Not before. Not after. Only when their old way of thinking has completely collapsed. That cannot be a coincidence. The town waits until a person's identity begins to crack. Then it shows them something impossible. It isn't revealing answers. It's creating new believers. This is the detail everyone missed. The visions don't explain reality. They replace it. Once someone experiences one impossible event, they can never return to normal thinking again. Jim still searches for logical explanations. But every new mystery pulls him further away from logic. Jade keeps insisting there must be a pattern. But the harder he searches, the deeper he falls into obsession. Notice how intelligent characters don't become wiser. They become consumed. The town weaponizes curiosity. Every answer creates 2 more questions. Every clue opens another door. Every discovery makes escape feel even further away. That isn't bad luck. That's design. Now think about Jade's symbols. Most people assume they're code waiting to be solved. But what if solving them isn't the point? Think about how symbols work in psychology. A symbol doesn't just communicate information. It changes the person looking at it. The more Jade studies them, the less connected he becomes to everyone else. He stops living. He starts decoding. He stops surviving. He starts chasing meaning. The symbols aren't giving him knowledge. They're reshaping his priorities. That means the symbols themselves could be another test. Not a map, not a message, a filter, separating those who can resist obsession from those who cannot. And suddenly, Jade's story becomes terrifying. Because maybe he isn't getting closer to the truth. Maybe he's becoming exactly what the town wanted him to become. But here's what changes everything. Let's talk about the faraway trees. Everyone assumes they're escape routes, secret pathways, shortcuts through impossible space. But have you noticed something strange? Nobody truly controls where they lead. Sometimes they help. Sometimes they trap. Sometimes they separate people. Sometimes they save them. That's incredibly important. A true escape route should be predictable. The faraway trees aren't. They're selective, almost intelligent. Ask yourself this. What if the trees aren't transporting bodies? What if they're transporting people based on what they still need to experience? Imagine the town as a giant psychological machine. Every location becomes another lesson. Every destination becomes another stage of transformation. That would explain why two people entering similar situations never receive the same outcome. The town isn't following geography. It's following psychology. And once you see that, everything begins to fit. Even the monsters. This is something most fans never question. The monsters smile. They speak softly. They act patient. Sometimes they even seem disappointed when people make certain choices.
Why?
Real predators don't care how you think. These creatures do. They tempt. They manipulate. They wait. Almost like teachers watching students fail an exam. Notice how often they encourage emotional mistakes instead of physical ones. They exploit fear, loneliness,
Love.
regret,
Hope.
They know exactly which emotion will break each person. That's incredibly specific. Too specific. Unless they've been studying people for a very long time. Now, let's go back to Victor. Everyone sees Victor as damaged. But maybe that's exactly why he's still alive. Victor stopped resisting the town years ago. He adapted. He learned its rhythms. He accepted impossible things without constantly trying to explain them. In other words, he became psychologically compatible with the place. Could that be why the town protects him? Because he's proof that complete transformation is possible? And if Victor represents the final stage, then everyone else is still in the middle of the process. Think about Boyd again. Every impossible burden somehow lands on him. Leadership, sacrifice, responsibility,
Pain. Hope. Despair.
every single time he begins recovering. The town creates another crisis, almost as if it refuses to let him stop changing. Not because it hates him, because it still needs him. That's the terrifying possibility. The strongest people suffer the most because they have the greatest potential to become whatever the town is creating. And this is where the entire theory flips upside down. Maybe survival has never been the reward. Maybe survival is the test itself. The people who die fail early. The people who live
Continue changing.
every nightmare is another lesson. Every loss is another step. Every impossible event pushes them further away from who they used to be, which leads to one terrifying realization. What if escaping the town doesn't actually mean winning? What if the people who leave before completing their transformation are simply sent back? Because if the town truly exists to reshape human identity, then escape would never be the ending. It would only be another phase of the experiment. And if that's true, then someone we've already seen may have escaped before, only to be brought back for one final purpose. And if someone really has escaped before, then the town isn't a prison. It's a system that doesn't care where you are. It only cares whether its work is finished. That single idea completely changes how we should look at every major character. Because maybe the town isn't choosing heroes. It's choosing candidates. People with different strengths, different weaknesses, different emotional wounds. Each one placed into the same impossible environment to see who changes the most. Look at what the show is actually telling us. No two characters experience the town in exactly the same way. Boyd faces impossible responsibility. Jade is consumed by knowledge. Tabitha is pulled toward the mysterious children. Sara hears voices that no one else can hear. Victor carries memories that nobody else understands. At first, these storylines seem disconnected, but they're not. They're different paths leading toward the same destination. Transformation. This is the detail everyone missed. The town never attacks people at their strongest point. It attacks the part of them they cannot protect. Boyd can fight monsters, but he cannot protect everyone.
So the town forces him to watch people die.
Jim can solve mechanical problems, but he cannot explain the impossible. So the town destroys his confidence in logic. Jade believes intelligence gives him control. So the town gives him puzzles with no clear answers. Sara desperately wants forgiveness. So the voices keep making her question whether redemption is even possible. Victor clings to memories. So the town slowly turns those memories into broken pieces he can barely trust. Every character is being dismantled in a different way. Not physically, psychologically. Because before someone can become something new, they first have to stop being who they were. But here's what changes everything. Think about the town itself. Have you ever noticed that it almost feels alive? Not alive in the sense that it speaks. Alive in the sense that it reacts. Whenever people begin making progress, something changes. Whenever they become too confident, a new threat appears. Whenever they believe they've discovered the rules evolve. That's not random horror. That's adaptation. Almost like the town is learning. Imagine playing a game against an opponent who studies every move you make. The moment you find a winning strategy, the opponent changes the game. That's exactly what happens in From. The talismans create hope. Then new dangers emerge. The monsters become familiar. Then something even stranger appears. The mystery shifts before anyone gets comfortable.
Why?
Because certainty is dangerous to the town. Confusion keeps the experiment alive. And this is where it gets darker. What if the town isn't testing individuals? What if it's testing humanity itself? Every group that arrives creates a new society. New leaders. New conflicts. New alliances. New betrayals. Watch how quickly people begin arguing over power, fear, food, trust, and sacrifice. It's almost like civilization is being rebuilt from scratch every single time. The town isn't only watching individuals break. It's watching communities evolve under pressure. Who becomes the leader? Who becomes the liar? Who becomes the believer? Who becomes the skeptic? Who sacrifices others?
Who sacrifices themselves?
Those questions repeat every cycle. Not because the writers need drama, because the town needs data. Now go back to Victor one last time. Victor remembers pieces of previous cycles. Drawings, objects, stories, faces. Entire generations that disappeared. Most viewers assume these memories simply help explain the past. But what if Victor serves a much larger purpose? What if he's living evidence that every cycle leaves something behind? A memory, a lesson, a scar. And maybe those scars are exactly how the town learns. That's why it never resets completely. Every cycle becomes smarter than the last. Every experiment becomes more precise. Every new arrival enters a town that already understands human nature a little better. That possibility is terrifying, because it means the enemy isn't standing still. It's evolving, just like the people trapped inside it. Now, everything connects. The monsters aren't random killers. They're pressure. The symbols aren't hidden messages. They're psychological triggers. The faraway trees aren't escape routes. They're controlled pathways. The voices aren't giving answers. They're manipulating choices. The children aren't simply ghosts asking for help. They may be the earliest victims of the same transformation, forever trapped between what they were and what the town wanted them to become. And finally, the town itself isn't the mystery. It's the machine. A machine designed to strip away fear, certainty, identity, morality, and hope until only one question remains. Who are you when everything that defines you has been taken away? Maybe that's the real experiment. Maybe the town doesn't create monsters. Maybe it creates survivors so psychologically transformed that they can never return to the people they once were. And if that's true, then escaping isn't freedom. It's graduation. A person may leave the town, but the town never truly leaves them. Which brings us to the most horrifying prediction for Season 4. What if the final battle isn't about destroying the town at all? What if the town has already succeeded? What if one of the survivors has unknowingly become the final product of the experiment and doesn't even realize it yet? Because if the town has been shaping one person from the very beginning, then the biggest twist won't be discovering what the town is. It will be discovering who the town has been creating all along. And when that person finally understands the truth, will they destroy the town or become the one who keeps the next cycle alive?